For those of you who have already logged on, welcome. We are so happy that you're here with us today. We have a wonderful panel, very impressive indeed. We will get started in about 2 minutes. We'll let other folks sign on. When we did this last week, it seemed to take about 2.5 minutes for everyone to sign on. So if you'll be patient, we'll get started in just a few minutes. But again, welcome. Again, if you've just logged on, it'll be just a minute before we start our program. We just want to make sure as many folks who are SVP'd are signing in, and they're currently signing in as we speak. So we'll just wait another minute. We still have folks logging on, so we'll get started in about 30 seconds to a minute. We're watching our numbers go up, and when they flatten out, we'll begin our program. Thank you for your patience. Welcome, everyone. It looks like it's a good time for us to get started, so we'll send it over to Jim. Jim, would you like to welcome our participants?
Thank you, Susan. Welcome. I'm Jim Smith, owner and founder of Service Scouts. It's a pleasure to be with so many of you today to discuss my favorite topic, which is service. As some of you know, my company has been around for 25 years, and I'm honored and fortunate to have served over 150 sports and entertainment clients. And I'm truly humbled in building these relationships with you over the years. Hosting this webinar is my way of helping all of us become a resource and help communicate best practices in the way to recover from this. Last week, we hosted our first webinar with a focus on our guests. Today's webinar will focus more on frontline staff. And I'd like to introduce Susan Danielik, who will be our moderator. And thank you for being here.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jim. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Susan Danielik. I'm the Director of Premium and Guest Services here at the Vinik Sports Group. So again, thank you all for participating. We had a great group last week. We have a very impressive panel today. And without further ado, I would like to ask them to introduce themselves. My role today here will be to keep us on track, keep us on time, and answer your questions, field your questions, and feed them to our panelists. So if we could, Anthony, would you like to get us started with a quick introduction?
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Susan. So I was on last week's call, so welcome back for those who are back again. My name is Anthony Mozzicato. I oversee guest experience for Hard Rock Stadium, home of the Dolphins, Miami Hurricanes, Miami Open Tennis, and other major events such as concerts and soccer. Most recently, the Super Bowl. Been with the Dolphins in the stadium for almost 4 years now. I had prior stints with the Kansas City Royals and Sporting KC. And prior to that was with college athletics for Florida Gulf Coast University and FIU, and happy to be here on this panel today.
Thank you, Anthony. Mary, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Mary Milne. I'm the Senior Vice President of Guest Experience and Blue Ribbon Service for Vinik Sports Group. We're the people that own the Lightning, but we also manage Amalie Arena and the Yuengling Center, which is on the campus of the University of South Florida. Thank everybody for being here, and it's a pleasure to help bring Jim's vision to life.
Thank you, Mary. We'll move on to Allie MacLeod. Allie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you, Susan. I'm Allie MacLeod. I am the Market Intelligence Manager for Vinik Sports Group. I'm in my 4th season with the team, and I oversee the customer research and data strategy here. So that's what I'll be talking about today.
We have a few new panelists this week. So why don't we start with Blake? Would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Blake Anderson. I am the president of the Larry H. Miller theaters. We have theaters in Utah and Nevada. We are also part of the Larry H. Miller Sports Entertainment Group that owns the Utah Salt Lake Bees.
Thanks so much, Blake. Phil, how about if you go next?
Hello, everyone. Philip Hastings, Vice President of Event Experience for the Golden State Warriors. We have event security and guest services on our team over at Chase Center. 18 years in the NBA, spent a majority of my beginning years in Orlando with the Orlando Magic, and now with the Golden State Warriors. Happy to be here today.
Thanks so much, Phil. And JP, would you like to go next?
Absolutely, Susan. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm JP Paul. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Development and Guest Services for the Minnesota Vikings, coming up on my 18th season with the organization. Have been involved with a variety of different aspects of our group, whether it be premium sales and services, some sponsorship sales, was part of our new stadium development team when we opened US Bank Stadium. And most recently here over the last 4.5, 5 years have been leading our guest relations charge at US Bank Stadium, and also working with our food service operators, our security companies, all sorts of different elements related to our service level at the stadium. So thanks again for having me.
Thanks so much, JP. So as you can see, we have a very impressive panel today. If you'd like to start putting your questions in, you can use your chat function to do that. I'll be monitoring those questions for you. Before we move into our actual program, Jim, would you like to say one more thing, introduce yourself again before we move into our program?
Thank you, everybody. I'm really excited about this, and I hope that we all have a really good takeaway, and this time that you spent with us over the next almost an hour is valuable to you. So let's get started. Tee it up, Susan.
Thank you. In order to set the stage for our discussion today, we don't want to come from where we just think things are going or how we feel about it. We really want to rely on some good data and strategy moving into a time that is uncharted. So Allie MacLeod, would you like to take us into that world of data and all things analysis?
Yeah, thank you, Susan. I will share my screen here. And let me know if everyone can see this. Perfect. Okay. So as Susan mentioned, we decided we didn't want to just go ahead and assume what our fans and attendees thought about COVID, especially as we enter that phase of understanding what this new world's going to look like once we bring people back into the arena. So we decided to do a COVID sentiment pulse, which we sent out to all of our attendees that have attended a game this season or had tickets to attend a game that was put on the pause. This was single game buyers, season ticket members, suite holders, loge members, group ticket buyers, and we had over gosh, now I don't know it off the top of my head, it was over 7,000 replies. So it's pretty great data collected just this past month. We'll get right into it. What we started with was trying to understand how they see COVID overall changing their lives, which was very little or only minor temporary changes, some temporary changes along with very few permanent changes, or a large number of radical disruptions, to put them into buckets of maintainers, adapters, and disruptors to really see where our audience falls on that scale. So as you can see, the majority are adapters, but we do have some disruptors, and then the maintainers, which are the people who aren't going to want to follow the new set of rules and this and that. And we really do have to understand how to cater to both those that want policies in place, but those who are frustrated, feeling their freedoms are taken away. So then we asked them what their level of concern would be attending events in large crowds once COVID-19 has cleared. As you can see here, 71% of our attendees have some level of concern, with only less than a third saying they're not really concerned. One thing I want to note about this is that this is no longer just about them per se, but it might be that they have a family member who's high risk, or in general, they don't want to infect population that could be high risk, or if you'll see here as well, not worried about getting the virus myself, more concerned with staff who interact with thousands of people. So these I've included for this reason, because sometimes these concerns aren't just about them. They have a lot of other things to take into consideration now. Like the person who said, I don't want to be responsible for passing it on to my older parents. I would much rather feel comfortable visiting them than going to a game. Then the other thing about that level of concern is that, you know, as we've seen in the research, just in general, COVID is impacting different races and generations differently. So as you'll see here, this level of concern is escalated for, you know, different demographics. And then down at the bottom here, when it comes to those generations, obviously that, I mean, not obviously, but as we see here, you would scale up towards the older these people are getting, the more their level of concern is. And at least especially for hockey, where our average attendee skews older, this is something we have to take into consideration. There are going to be people in that arena who are concerned, and it's our job to make sure that they feel as safe as possible. So, you know, again, I've included another quote down here. My wife and I are elderly, and our family doctor has advised us not to attend any spectator sports until a vaccine is developed. We're high risk and don't want to jeopardize our health. Then we also asked, once the NHL resumes play, how do they expect their consumption to change? And while a third of our attendees are eager to attend a game ASAP, there's more, which between this 36 and this 2% comes out to 38% that will not be attending right off the bat. So 36% plan to watch on TV to begin with to be safe, and 2 plan to attend less hockey in general than before. And again, another quote here showing, you know, we love going to games, but unfortunately, it's not worth our life. We'll watch on TV until there's a vaccine or significantly lower infection numbers. So it's impacting people who still love the sport, but they have to look out for themselves first. We also asked about how you expect your leisure activities / shopping spend habits to change in the next 6 months, knowing that a lot of people have been impacted by furloughs, being laid off in general, just being unemployed, maybe owning their own businesses that have been impacted. So 62% plan to spend less. And that's, I included down here, this person who was like, this is only due to the financial impact and not the actual virus. So there's some people who just are burdened with the financial side, and it's not necessarily that they're scared of the virus, but they can't help what's happened to them financially. Which leads us to which stadium / venue precautions are more important before returning to live sports events. And as you'll see here, the biggest one is availability of sanitation at 78%, but you have everything down to 35% wearing a face mask. The reason I put this one in yellow is because I think when it comes to the actual fan experience, this has one of the larger potentials to really impact it, both for the people having to wear it, but also when if our staff is wearing it, how are you interacting with these fans? They can't see that warm smile. You really have to speak with your eyes, and it's really about getting to this new normal of comfortability, but that's just one that can really impact it. Now, while there's 35% that think it's important to wear them, as I mentioned before, when you have the maintainers, there's also people who aren't going to want to do this. So understanding how to interact with them if they're frustrated with certain policies is going to be something that we really need to take into consideration. So while I have here that says we all need to be smart and protect those people who are high risks, there's a couple other quotes that I wanted to include. The first being, thanks for stepping up and helping take care of your employees. As much as I want to get back to Amalie to see the boys back on the ice, I want to make sure everyone is safe and comfortable first. I think that this is a big one I wanted to include because a lot of people in the survey talked about their concern for the employees, not for their sake, but for the employees' sake. These are the people that have to be here. We're the ones that have to be making sure that things are running smoothly, but we want to make sure that we feel comfortable as well, and so do our fans. And I think that really shows that it's a community and everyone wants everybody to be safe, which is a nice thing. However, then on the flip side, you're going to have fans like this. I don't want to be forced to follow unsubstantiated restrictions on my freedom to attend games and enjoy the camaraderie of like-minded fans. If owners follow the path of politicians and place unnecessary restrictions, then my likelihood to continue my relationship with the team will be diminished. We're stuck in the age-old 80-20 rule, where 20% of the people are controlling the 80% of society. So that's something that I know they're going to discuss later on in here, is how do we cater to the people who are frustrated with, say we do implement a face mask rule or something, there's going to be people really upset about it. So it's not just catering to the people that are scared, it's catering to those who aren't scared and they're annoyed. But lastly, you know, given that this is about, you know, serving and building trust and serving with empathy, I wanted to end it on this. Very impressed that you sent this survey out. Really speaks to the commitment of the organization and the importance of your fans. I'm a season ticket holder in another state. This is their words, not mine, a Florida transplant, and have received nothing from them. Kudos to you. So I think that, you know, showing this was something, and we got so many thank yous like that, just showing that we really are concerned and care about what's best for them, not just making those decisions blindly based on our assumptions of what our fans do and don't want.
Allie, thank you so much. Your data and your perspective are always so powerful. If anyone has questions for Allie, please, again, just put them in your chat feature and I will pick them up and we'll hopefully get those answered during this time. To further set the stage for our program today, Jim, I've heard you've had a few experiences over the last week I'd like to share. So what's it like in real time out there?
Well, thank you, Susan. And Allie, that was great stuff. I think we've all have new experiences, and depending upon where you live, certain things are open, whether it be restaurants or the grocery stores. And I always just kind of relate to what I think we all see things because of the vocation we're in and what we do for a living. We're probably a little bit more sensitive to customer service, and we're paying attention to things that most people don't see. But seeing folks with masks on and seeing folks that are serving you with gloves on and trying to understand verbal communication, and we've all seen eye contact that's really friendly and kind and genuine, and you can see they're smiling with their eyes. And we've had experiences where people are really upbeat and positive. And then we've had probably experiences where you see in someone's eyes that they're just really kind of concerned. And I think what I want to share is that things are starting to open up where I live, and I've just found myself wanting to go out to dinner and wanting to go out to lunch and interact with people because I'm a people person. So I find myself really even paying attention more because of what I do for a living. But I can share with you that Red Robin Restaurants, which is a large chain, I went there for lunch a few days ago with a good friend of mine. And this young gal comes up and she's kind of skipping up to the table and smiling with her eyes and suggesting things for us to try. And I had to ask her, I said, have you had some extra training before you open? And she said, yep. And she explained it to me that they did some electronic training and some video training. And then they got together, they had a really good plan corporate wide. And also their manager at that particular restaurant brought everybody in and they did role playing and they talked about how to approach tables and how to greet. And it's like there's a big emphasis on engagement, and there's a big emphasis on enthusiasm, and there's a big emphasis on sincerity in their service with a genuine kindness that comes across, and I've seen it a few times in a few places, and then I've seen it in some places where there hasn't been any. And I thought that would be a good topic for us today to talk about that, because with the 147 sports entertainment clients we work with, that, you know, that's all part of the engagement. It's all a part of what we help with, is measuring that and giving you feedback on that and learning on the best ways to do this and create a culture that's super positive, and it's all new. On top of that, what I learned in talking to some people is they have all these new, as Allie mentioned, I think her last slide, about the government's expecting you to do things a lot differently. So the server can't actually serve the food, they can just take the order. One server had a beeper in his back pocket that reminded him every 15 minutes that he had to go wash his hands, even though he has gloves on. And the efficiencies and the productivities have changed for people. And it's a lot more clunkier. And still, how do they follow through on those guidelines? And those are all tasks, but how do they do that? How do they do that through a mask and with gloves on? And how do they still give you great service, is I think our topic for today. So thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Jim. So I'm hearing a recurring theme throughout this, and really it's about preparedness. So why don't we get into our questions, give our panel a chance to let us know. Our first question is, how are you going to prepare your staff to return to work? Is there anyone who'd like to field that question? JP, please.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. I think, you know, the thing that Jim just mentioned, it's not going to be business as usual, right? And you're going to need a staff that is willing to accept that the way they did things a year ago when they came to our stadium in August, it's going to be different. And I think first, that's going to be a big piece as we bring our new staff on board, is that we're bringing the right people on board that are willing to make those adjustments. And I think everything they do, from the check-in to how they engage with staff to how they eat their lunch, it's all going to be different. And you know, from a hands-on training piece, we're really trying to look at some different ways to do it. I think, Phil, in one of our prep calls, you brought up the idea of, you know, we might not be able to get down to greet kids the way we have in the past, or give them high fives or things like we have in the past. So we're gonna technically work on some of those engagement pieces, and we're gonna have to probably do it through online training initially, right? Or some sort of training like a Zoom call. So those are some of the things we're looking at. And I think one of the things that we all have to probably start to look at too is, and this goes a little bit to what Allie just talked about, is what is the priority of the guests when they come into our building? You know, traditionally we give all of our guest experience staff a top 6. Where's the ATM? Where's the restroom? Things like that. I think we are now going to need to look at what those top 6 are and provide them with that information that's going to be relevant to what the guest is going to be asking for.
Thank you very much, JP. Mary, would you like to chime in? You'll need to unmute.
There we go. You know, we're very training based with Vinik Sports Group, and our approach normally would be that we bring our staff in, we do an instructor-led training. In this circumstance, I would flip the script. I would flip it and start with electronic trainings, and then right at the last point, probably bring in a big group and do a larger participatory training with some help from our CEO and our leadership. But I think strategically, once we get the word that we're able to come back, we would probably be sending out an email asking the staff, are you ready and willing and able to come back? Because to the point that JP had, is you need them to accept the new reality. I think that was a very critical point he made. And that email would address that. Hey, are you ready, willing, and able to come back? Once we get that, then I would probably follow up with a video that's very upbeat, maybe from our CEO, saying, we're excited to have you back, and give them some information to get them ready for the coming season. And then we would probably follow up with an electronic version of our overall service initiatives, followed by another an electronic training that focuses just on the changes that we will implement because of COVID. We also already have each of our frontline managers has created their own training electronically. So again, we'd probably have them push that out. And then at the last thing, probably shortly a day or two, a week before we open up, we would bring them all out, allow them to walk around the arena, maybe do a guided tour or a self-guided tour with some incentives in there. Let them experience what it's like to go through a concession stand line. Let them experience what it's like to be searched or to be the searcher, so that they can not only learn and see what it means to be touchless, but experience that and walk a little bit in the shoes of the fans, while at the same time being able to test out how it's going to be different for them. But that's really kind of our step-by-step we would look to implement when we get the word that we're able to come back.
Thank you. And Phil, would you like to chime in there, please?
Yeah, I echo Mary and JP were spot on with that. I'd just like to add to it communication, always and in all ways. And that can start now. That can start at any time up until we get there. What we've currently done is stayed in communication with our team members, because we really don't want to turn that faucet off and then have to turn it on and refill the bowl completely. So we feel by like keeping that communication open currently with some town halls, weekly emails, whatever it is to engage those team members, so that when we do get ready to get back and we've got to start the training, we're already engaged and we're already there to a certain point, and they're open and they're ready, and they don't feel like, well, hey, you didn't talk to me this whole time, where were you? And I know a lot of us on this panel are already doing that, but it's a great opportunity if you aren't doing it now to go ahead and start looking into, in some form or way, just communicating outside and engaging with your team members, because they're the lifeline of everything we do. And also to add to that, as we're preparing them, let's prepare ourselves by utilizing them when we're doing these trainings. With them being our front line, they're our eyes and ears. So they're a great opportunity to give us that feedback on everything from what they've experienced in the past to how do they feel, and we're going to get to this a little bit later on masks and gloves, but really understanding their vantage point, because they're key in delivering on it.
Thank you, Phil. And what I'm hearing throughout your discussion is that it's a level of trust that has to be built, not just with our fans, but also with our employees. So what do your organizations intend to do to build that trust with employees and fans? Thanks, Blake.
Well, I think it's been said, but it's important to picture that the place that our team members left and the place that they're returning back to after being furloughed or off are not the same. And the same holds true for our guests that we're inviting into our arenas, theaters, and buildings, is that the last time that they saw a game or a movie was a different experience than what we're inviting them back to. So anything we can do to manage those expectations before they enter the buildings is going to help both our team and our guests as they arrive. So what we have done is send out messaging on social media. We have sent videos that we're requiring all our team to watch. We're having people come into the buildings, and as we open, we're inviting other team members of buildings that will be opening in the future to witness what's happening. And, it's gone so well that the messaging has gone viral, and we're having our guests now go on social media and other areas telling people how safe it is to come back to the theaters and what a good experience they had. And I think that's what we want. It's different. For sure, and probably will be for some time. But if we can manage those expectations, I think we're way ahead of the game.
Thanks so much, Blake. Anthony, at the Miami Dolphins Hard Rock Stadium, you all were pretty far ahead of the curve when it came to putting a plan together, putting it in print, and sharing it with others. How does that tie into building that same trust that Blake was speaking about?
Yeah, I think the biggest part of that I understood, and the reason why we put this plan together, is to be prepared, but also just to communicate effectively in advance. Not only with guests but with staff. I think we all share the same philosophy. In order to treat guests well, we have to treat our staff well first. So I think building trust with our staff will be really important, number one, because guests can see that, and like Jim alluded to, guests will see if they're comfortable or not, or they may ask, "Hey, did you get training or not?" And they can tell. So I think from our end, we need to focus on the entire staff journey and make sure they're comfortable, but we also need to be transparent with our staff and our guests on changes, and we need to communicate those well in advance. And we have to be ready to actually execute what we communicate. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at us as we operationally get going to see if we're almost telling the truth, right? In a way, a lot of new initiatives. So we have to really, do what we say. That's in my opinion. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that, Anthony. Unless anyone else has anything to add to that, I'll move on to a very quick story of my own. My husband and I went to dinner at an Outback Steakhouse the other night, and our server came up to our table, and he had a mask on and gloves, and we said, "Oh, hi, what is your name?" And he said, "Brett." And we said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Brett." And I said, "Oh, Brett." "No, Brett." I said, "I'm sorry, Brent?" And he said, "No, Brett." We finally got through a very painful couple minutes before we learned his name was Brad. It was humorous, and we all, just smiled about it, because what can you do? But it is difficult to communicate through a mask. So with that in mind, that experience under my belt, I'd like to ask you all, how will you teach or train to work around masks and gloves? Thank you, Blake.
Well, I have a personal experience, maybe just a little different from yours, but it was nonetheless, it was an eye-opener like that. And that is, last Friday night, I went down to one of our theaters that was open, and I thought that I would help the team out and do what I could to assist as we invited guests in. And so I wore my mask in, and then when I got to the theater, I put on the gloves and began to help the team members. And it wasn't half hour, 40 minutes into my service with them that I began to feel claustrophobic, and my hands were sweating. And I began to think to myself, my goodness, we're bringing these team members in and we're asking them to work these 8-hour, 9-hour shifts in these gloves, in this mask, in this setting where no one can see their smiles, where no one can really understand clearly what they're saying, as you said, Susan. And I just think, wow, we got to do something to help these guys out. And so we started rethinking, we need to provide more breaks. We need to have empathy. We need to look at the products that we're using, both for gloves and for masks for our teams, to really help them be able to function and do the jobs that they want to do and need to do. But most importantly, I think it's important for all of us as leaders and managers and owners and everything else to get in and do it with them. Put the gloves on, put the mask on, see what that feels like. Once you develop that kind of empathy, then you're able to sit with the team and come up with the best decisions for everyone.
Blake, thank you so much. Phil, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, that's exactly what's got to start with. And then I think the next piece is to retrain the importance of body language, use of eyes, tone of voice. You both just talked about stories that, how critical is it? It's more important now than ever. I mean, we've always talked about body language for one and how important that was, but it was easy to catch or correct with a warm welcome or a smile. You can't do that now if you're wearing the mask. So it's going to be key for us to really train the staff or the team members on what it looks like behind the mask, right? And we can't get on one knee and give the high fives, but how do we get those eyes into a position? How do we get our movements so that it's warm and welcoming? And then it's the tone of the voice. It's training them to be able to be there and create that empathy right from the get-go, so that the customer, the guest, just feels comfortable and then excited to be there.
Thank you, Phil. Mary, it looked like you had something to add to that.
You know, I did, and then Phil covered it so well. But I agree with both Blake and Phil, as I think we as leaders have to walk the walk with them. We can't just talk about it. We can't just show it. We've got to experience it. And I think it's important that our staff see that. You know, in talking with Blake just to prepare for this call the other day, he mentioned his experience, and a light bulb went off to me about what are our break rooms like? Because I think our break rooms will now become very different, and they're going to become more necessary for people to get away, be able to wash their hands. Maybe that's where the hand sanitizer really needs to be. But I think we're going to need some different things to support our staff through this. It is going to be challenging. But I do think being willing to walk the walk, talk the talk with them. And the other comment I would say is that while I wish we had events, and wish I was dealing with bringing guests into our building right now, because of the mask issue, I'm somewhat pleased that I get to watch and experience this in other places so that we can continue to learn the impact that this is having. If we had to play hockey tomorrow and I had to put staff out in masks, we probably wouldn't get it very correct. We wouldn't have enough time to learn everything that we need to learn and impart that to our staff before we go live. So my advice is get your hands dirty, walk the walk with them, but also pay attention to what's happening around you, because I still think there's an awful lot we can learn on this.
Thank you, Mary. Jim, you sent an email to us last week that had some different masks that are helpful in showing empathy or emotion. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Susan. Well, I would think that if I owned a sports team and I was bringing people back to work, you know, all this really good information everybody shared is cool, but when you think about the number of staff and also thinking about your subcontracted food and beverage, security, parking people is getting on the same page as all of them, and it's all because the customers that come don't understand that food and beverage isn't Amalie Arena, or the security department isn't the Golden State Warriors. Having them all seamless, but I think you can make it really fun. If it comes to be that we open up with masks and gloves, is I would really research what you can do to create a great mask program that, as Blake mentioned, is really workable and breathable, and is a good quality fabric, a good quality mask, and make them fun. There are masks. I've done some research. ETSY.com is a source where they make masks that, you know, you can have smiley faces on. I think you can put whatever graphics you want on. It could be branded to your brand. You might even be able to put Stephen Curry's face on there, or Draymond Green's, or maybe a hockey mask with, you know, some of your hockey smiles with missing a couple teeth, and make it fun. And so it creates some laughter and some fun, and is an icebreaker. As well as you may want to do some, if it is masks, you may want to do giveaways. You know, so your guests come in and you give them a mask that they can take and wear around that has, you know, the Lightning logo on it, or the Megaplex logo. So those are just ideas, and I'm sure all of the, looks like we've got about 120 participants. So they're all probably thinking about that. So that was just something I shared. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So the title of our webinar today is How to Serve with Empathy and Enthusiasm. We've spoken a little bit about that. I got really enthusiastic, Jim, when you talked about the smiley face with missing teeth. So anyway, if I could throw that out to our panelists, how are we going to serve with, in regard to empathy and enthusiasm, particularly? Thank you, JP.
Yeah, Susan, one thing that I know as we develop our plan going forward, I think we want to make sure that we, empathy has always been part of the way we serve, right? I think all of us, not just my building, but all of us. And I think what we really have to look at is the next level of how we do this. And, we always tell our people, you never know the situation they're in, right? This could be a COVID survivor walking into our building. Could be a person who's coming to their first ever Vikings game, and unfortunately they're having to experience it maybe with a mask or something like that. So we're just going to continue, I think, to make sure that our staff understands every situation is different. Every person coming into that building could be experiencing their first Vikings game, could be experiencing their first Lightning game, whatever it might be. And just really continue to kind of develop that message of empathy. And then from the enthusiasm side, I think, Phil, you hit on it. Body language is going to be something completely different, right? Jim, you referenced earlier, and I think it was your server at Red Robin, she smiled with her eyes, right? That's how we have to smile now. We're going to have to smile with our eyes. Our body language might need to be a little more boisterous to show our enthusiasm for being a staffer on game day. So we're just going to kind of continue to work on those types of things as we roll through these next, hopefully 2 months before we're ready to bring people into our stadium.
Thanks, JP. Would any other panelists like to chime in there? Thank you, Blake.
I think, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier on, but a welcome video of some sort, whether it be the president, the CEO, the owner, whoever, or even one of the players, welcoming fans and guests back, and letting them know that we understand things are a little different than they were, and we appreciate your patience through this. And we've seen the messaging out there. Together we'll get through this. Well, at this point, it's, we're living through this now. So together we're living in this, and we'll be all right together, and just kind of hopefully keep that sense of compassion and understanding going, so that as things are inconvenient, uncomfortable, as there are lines, as employees are stressed, team members are stressed, that there is some compassion and kindness that is emulated.
Thank you, Blake. We have another question on the table here. It's for Allie. Allie, regarding data and surveys, what your survey produced last week might not look the same in a month. So how often are you planning on sending out surveys before people maybe get survey fatigue or whatever? What's the plan moving forward, and what advice do you have to give to other organizations who may be going down that same road?
So great question. We actually, in anticipation of both knowing that this is an ever-evolving thing, where people's sentiment towards it is going to change as it evolves, but also being cognizant of survey fatigue and not just re-blasting people the same questions, we added a question into there with kind of that, just giving the paragraph on, we want to understand your concerns as they evolve, as this evolves. Would you be willing or interested in receiving this survey every few weeks to months, so that we can keep a pulse on the most current needs and concerns of our attendees? And I will say I was actually impressed and shocked by how many people said yes. I was expecting maybe like a 50-50, especially when it comes to, an STM I would assume would be a little higher, but when it comes to a single game buyer or something, no. We had 86% of our respondents said that they would be willing and interested in taking the survey every few weeks to a month, which was awesome. For STMs, I think it was like 97%. So it was so we baked that in. So the only people who will get it going forward will be the people who opted in to get it, which was, again, a huge sample size based on what we sent out. The other thing, though, is knowing that the NHL, they were supposed to deploy a survey earlier this month that will be going out today. It has similar questions, but they actually help us out a little bit more. They'll be complementary. Once that goes out and we get that first set of data back, and we're going to come up with our plan. Are we going to ask the exact same questions? Do we need to tweak some and ask a few more? But our next wave of this will be going out sometime in June. So sorry, that was kind of long-winded, but wanted to cover all the bases there.
No, thank you very much. Again, it's just so impactful to move forward based on data rather than our gut feeling. So it's very important. So it's time to wrap up. I'd like to give each panelist a chance just for some parting words. We have a good group of service-minded people out there who are moving forward just like we are, writing our own blueprint. So if you have any final words of advice or anything, please. Who would like to go first? Well, then Mary, please. Thank you.
You know I'm not going to leave you hanging. So my parting advice is traditionally we teach our frontline staff about 6 to 8 different questions that we call engagement questions. And we ask them to use them with guests. Traditionally, they might be, are you celebrating anything tonight? Is this your first game? Who might be your favorite player? Those types of things. What we plan to do to kind of address the COVID, build trust, as well as demonstrate empathy is we're going to switch those questions up, or we're going to add maybe 4 or 5 new ones to that. And those would be, some are statements, some are questions. One statement be, thanks for choosing to come out, because it truly is a choice right now. Thanks for trusting us with your business. Do you have any concerns that I can address right now? And another one would be, would you like me to tell you about our COVID policies that we have implemented? But those are some things that we feel we need to change as people come back, because that's going to help us engage better with our fans, demonstrate empathy, and help build that trust.
Thank you for that, Mary. JP.
Yeah, I guess the one bit of advice, and we're all in this business for a certain reason, and it's most of us, we want to help others, right? The one thing I guess I would say is as we go into continued unknown times is just be authentic and be genuine. Be genuine with your staff, be genuine with your fans. You know, we all have been very concerned about the health of our staff and our coworkers and our families and friends. And I think if we just continue to show our staff members we do care about them, we are going to do everything we can to keep them safe. We're not just checking a box, so to speak. That those are the types of things that will build that loyalty. We all know it's tough. It was prior to COVID to find staff to work game days. I think we all see that. But to build that loyalty among staff, I think being authentic, being genuine with them, that will obviously then get passed down to our fans through our staff. But that's the kind of thing where we're at right now.
Thank you for those words, JP. Phil, would you like to take a turn?
Yeah, I think we just have to be okay with uncertainty. I mean, we're in this together. Be okay with uncertainty, but be proactive. Everybody here today, everybody that's on the panel, the attendees, we're all peers. Utilize those peers in the industry. We may not have all the answers, but someone may have an idea that helps us get to the answer. So be proactive, get out there and talk with your peers. It may be in this industry, it may be in another industry, but there's information out there. I think Mary said it earlier. I'm glad we're not the first to go back, because we do need to learn. What we do is so important, and those learnings will be key. So reading those articles, and there's a ton of articles out there. So it's finding the right ones, but utilizing those peers. So I'd like to leave it with just utilize the peers.
That's a great message. Thank you I'm very grateful for all of my peers today. I can tell you that. Anthony, do you have something to add, please?
Just, the one thing that keeps screaming out to me is just, in order for our staff to feel comfortable and be enthusiastic, we need to lead the way. We need to make sure that they're having fun, that they're excited. We may be the first ones to have guests, and that is a little scary, but we have to be prepared for that. but we have to be comfortable, and we have to be confident and show that to our staff that we care about them, and to our guests the same. But also we need to, like Phil said, be proactive. I just think that, we just got to show our staff that everything's the same in one way, which is we're all here to have fun and provide answers and assist guests. And that's what we enjoy to do. So let's do it in a safe way with new guidelines. But let's not forget why we all do this, which is to have fun and to enjoy, the fact that we're hosting and entertaining guests for sports and entertainment. So whatever we can do to keep staff morale up, I think it's going to be really important, whether it's engaging with them now and, stay engaged with them, or it's, your pre-shift meetings or your recognition program. We just got to, if anything, focus more on how we lead the way and really not only ask them to increase their voice, their tone of voice, but also we need to really boost up our energy for them as well.
Anthony, thank you for that. And if you are, in fact, the first to open up, we know that it will be done with a lot of very heartfelt care and preparation that you've already displayed as an organization you've done. So, and we'll all be out there rooting for you.
Yeah, well, I just forgot Blake's already opened up, so.
That's true. So
know.
Blake, you couldn't have given me a better segue. Before we hand it back to Jim, Blake, do you have some final words?
Sure, and we aren't completely. We're not completely open, but we're certainly trying to get there. My final thoughts are along the line of JP's, and that is, we all have competitive advantages. We all have our trade secrets, and we all have things that we work hard to do the very best at. But when it comes to team member safety and our guest safety and bringing people back into our entertainment venues, regardless of what team or theater or event that it is, we really, and this is what appealed to me about this panel so much, is that we really need to rely on each other's best practices. We need to share those best practices, and we need to work together to calm the fears, to keep people safe, to be able to bring our country back to the level of fun and entertainment and good times that we've missed for the last 90 days. And it's so important. I really, really liked the data that Allie showed us at the beginning, because it's so important that we address those concerns and those fears. And I hope that, Allie, when you do the next survey, I hope that we see more green, and that we see more people who are less fearful of coming out or more likely to spend money in our venue, because it's up to us to create that environment that they will want to do that. And so I think on the final note is let's just work together to create collectively a safe and fun entertainment option for everyone.
Thank you so much, Blake. Well, it's been a very, very big honor and pleasure to work with you all the panelists. And I'm so happy that we had so many participants today out there who are just as hungry for this information as we all are. I'm signing off. It's been a pleasure to be with you all, and I'll hand it over to Jim for the final farewell.
Susan, thank you so much for leading us through this and keeping us all in line. You did a great job again. This was a really good discussion about trust, empathy, and enthusiasm, and it makes me think about maybe another topic that we could talk about if we want to do another one of these, which is about empowerment, because with all of the new policies and things and the new tasks that are responsible, is how do we empower our staff and our frontline staff to be able just to make the best decisions. Anthony and Allie and Mary, thank you again for participating in both of these. Love you guys. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you soon. Blake and JP and Phil, great job. A recording of this webinar will be emailed to you. You should have all received one from the last one. We also would love your feedback. We're going to send out a survey along with the recording that we hope you'll fill out for us, and your responses will determine whether we conduct another one and what topics we may address. And you may even want to be a panelist and have something you want to share. But most of all, I want to thank all of you for being so generous and kind and helpful to one another. And thank you all for bringing this to life. And I hope to see you all soon.